to rectify various measures or to adapt various changes that present climatic conditions is going on. And if you see the much talked about topic during the recent decade is the green energy. And the green energy always aims to promote policies and business that always help in tandem for the development of the environment. And carbon dioxide, the main global warming gas, wherein the concentration is increasing alarmingly in the Earth atmosphere, and because of which we are facing various climate change issues. But if we see, the world has given us a lot of opportunity to deal with such problems. We can speak economically also. If you speak economically, it's a better opportunity to economize the carbon emission with a carbon source, say a sink or trade-off by creating a global market with all the stakeholders and trading over various carbon credits. And the phrase carbon credit also has been established for over a decade. And now specifically, the blockchain technology in carbon trading is the need of the hour and increases the scope of adopting carbon trading among diverse stakeholders and government organizations. Even UNFCCC has recognized the capability of blockchain technology and its application in carbon trading and emission reduction. It can act as a tool to monitor the progress in implementing the nationally determined contributions under the Paris Agreement to reduce all our climate warming gases. And if you see all the developed nations, say US, UK, Canada, they are all committed for such development in blockchain technology, and they are adapting it. They are using it as an applications in various fields of financial services, smart contracts in healthcare, property management, climate action, and also in renewable energies mostly, which are found to be cost effectiveness and efficiency. Certainly, this webinar will introduce all the participants who are on this platform today to know more about blockchain technology and how better we can do carbon trading in UT of Puducherry. And also adapting these applications as a long-term solution to reduce our climate change issues. Thank you for the opportunity provided. Thank you.
Thank you for the short and excellent keynote address delivered, sir. Thank you so much. Now it's time to move to the thematic talk of today by Sri Sankalp Suman, who is a very young and very dynamic professional. Sankalp is a young entrepreneur and an environmental engineer from Delhi Technological University. He co-founded ePrayas, a waste management technology company in 2020, and Offset Go for building climate technology and carbon trading in 2021. As a Gen Z leader and activist, Sankalp has been involved with countless organizations to spread awareness and drive constructive actions in various parts of India. He has been awarded by Harvard for making India's case on climate change. He has also been invited by the UN to demonstrate market-based solutions and its applications in India, and due to present the same in the Parliament of India in April. As a national debating and poetry champion and an avid member of the model UN community, he firmly believes in speaking for the mute and fighting for what is right. He has also been associated with theatre and storytelling for most of his life and has been responsible for creating a number of stories, plays, and nukkad nataks to bring in necessary and lasting change in the society. Sankalp believes in the power of youth and the large role it has to play in defining India's future. He believes in advocating for climate crisis, first as a child's right crisis, and his combined expertise of technical knowledge and market and social trends have been pivotal in developing market-based solutions for managing GHG emissions through Offset Go. He firmly believes in giving back to the community more than you take from it. He is currently working as the co-founder and chief climate strategist at Offset Go and is closely involved in creating nature-based solutions that provide direct benefits to the most marginalized communities, tribal, women, children, etc., and protect our country from the ill effects of climate change. I welcome Mr. Sankalp to give your presentation.
Thank you, Kalamegam sir, for that wonderful introduction. And I would also like to thank at the beginning Dr. Alfred for his keynote address, because he highlighted some very crucial issues that we will be discussing in the course of this presentation. And I'm very, very glad that so many people could join us today to understand the need, the necessity of climate action, and of not just arbitrary climate action, and organize a constructive sort of climate action that is best suited for India, and how India's economic journey, India's journey of growth can be intertwined with an environmental one. So very welcome and thank you to all of you for coming. If we can start sharing the presentation, I'll begin with it, not taking much of your time. Should I share the presentation, sir?
No, we have started sharing. Is it visible?
Okay, now it's visible.
For other participants also, is the presentation visible? Can somebody unmute their mic and tell us if it is visible?
Yes, sir. It's
Yes, sir. Yes,
It's
sir.
visible, sir.
Okay. Mr. Sankalp, then you can proceed with your talk.
All right. So, we'll talk about carbon trading, and we'll discuss at length how Puducherry would benefit for something like carbon trading, how blockchains can be used and everything. But at the very onset, I would like, we've all gathered here to know about carbon trading. We should also know why is it necessary to do carbon trading, or why is it necessary to, spend so many resources and so much effort and energy into saving the environment. A lot of you, all of you, I'm sure, must know what sort of a catastrophe climate change is bringing on us. But I want to just start with a very small example that Bill Gates cited in his book, which last year came out on climate change. He said climate change does not affect you always directly. There is sea level rise. There is a pandemic. There are waste management. Puducherry is also struggling through a pollution problem. So all of these direct problems are there, but there are also a lot of indirect problems. For instance, in Syria in 2011-12, there was a large amount of drought because the average surface temperature of the soil had started to increase. This created a mass shift of the population of Syrians from Syrian villages to the cities of Syria. And you know what happened in 2013? All of these people who were displaced because of lower agricultural productivity, all linked to climate change. It was these displaced people that became the soldiers of Islamic State, of the ISIS, and what kind of a problem ISIS became. So when we talk about climate change, we're not only talking about tangible things. Those tangible things, we can say it will happen in 20 years down the line, 30 years down the line. There are also effects of climate change that you are facing right now. Nature is so vast and varying that we cannot always trace things back to how it started. A simple, so next slide, please. So how fast is the climate changing? I'll give you another example here. We all heard about the locust attack that was that was all the rage in 2020, 2019, towards the end of 2019. Pakistan declared a national emergency because their entire food security was threatened because of these locusts. I'll tell you why that happened. There was a forest fire in Australia. There was a forest fire in Australia. There was an El Nino effect in the ocean. Due to that forest fire was caused because of climate change. There was the warming up of oceans. This caused a flood in Africa. While there was a fire burning in Australian forest, there was flooding in African deserts. So much rain happened in Africa that hasn't happened in decades. This created a boom of locust populations. And from Africa to the Middle East to Afghanistan, Pakistan, India, and beyond, these locusts came, they flew, and they ate in one day. They used to eat 30,000 people's worth of food. That is the magnanimity of the problem that we are dealing here. What is happening? The new IPCC report that came out just 2 weeks ago, we had set a target of 1.5 degree temperature rise to happen at the end of this century. The new IPCC report that came out has said that we are going to achieve a 1.5 degree rise by 2040. 2040, sir. This fact should scare the life out of anybody who's listening to it. And my purpose of telling all of this here right now, and you'll understand it in the due course of this presentation, that there is a lot we can do about it, but we have to accept first of all that it's a problem that we cannot put in our closet anymore. We need to act now. We need to act today. The sea level rise, and Puducherry, this is especially important for Puducherry, the sea level rise has doubled in the last decade. It was already very high, but in the last decade, and this is a NASA fact, that it has doubled in the last decade. So next slide. So let's get into the technicalities now. One thing we know that since the Industrial Revolution, since 1870s, we've started burning a lot of fossil fuels, and the temperature, as you can see, has been rising. The average surface temperature of Earth is already at 1.2 degrees Celsius. It's about to reach 1.5 by 2040, and it's about to reach 3.6 by the end of the century. And a 3.6 degree temperature rise, we'll have a big problem, and I'll come to that. Next slide, please. Now, this is called a Keylink Curve. This is a very historic curve. It changed the world's perception on climate change. This shows you the CO2 level from a very, very long time ago. Earth has been through ice ages, continental drifts, a lot of things. But if you see post-industrial revolution, the level of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, it is unparalleled, even to the ice age and continental drifts and the other ages before Earth. So we have really reached the pinnacle of CO2 emissions, and this is why the temperature is where it is. That is where carbon trading comes in. That is why managing your carbon emissions, managing your greenhouse gas emissions, most of it is carbon dioxide, 92% of it is carbon dioxide. So managing all of this effectively becomes very important. Next slide. What does this mean to India? Now let's come back to home. India has a 7,000 kilometer long coastline. It's much more than 7,000 kilometers. So in the new UN IPCC report, it says Puducherry, Mumbai, Goa, and a lot of other major cities on the coastline of India, 40% of the coastline is going to vanish. 40% of India's coastline is going to go away. It seriously threatens these cities. We even presented to the Honorable Chief Minister, and this is what we told him there also. We showed him a very startling picture. There is a very nice Mahatma Gandhi statue in Puducherry. We ran the scenario of sea level rise. That statue on the beach is going to be completely submerged. The beaches that you see right now in the next 15 years, they will be submerged at the rate at which sea level is rising. And it's not just that. Along with sea level rise, there's also an increase in extreme weather phenomena. The cyclone Amphan that happened last year has costed $12 billion of damages. And the propensity, and the Environment Minister of India very recently in a conference also highlighted this very similar point, that the propensity of extreme weather phenomena has increased very exponentially in the last few decades, all because of climate change. And one cyclone Amphan costed $12 billion of damage. In the next 50 years, India is going to face 35 trillion. Currently, our economy is between 2 and 3 trillion. We're going to face 35 trillion worth of loss in the next 50 years due to climate change. This is a figure that is quoted by Government of India everywhere it goes as well. Agricultural productivity is declining, and another very important issue that we will face because of climate change is a refugee crisis. For example, there's going to be around a 20 crore influx of refugees from Bangladesh should the temperature continue rising the way it is rising. Where these 20 crore people are going to go with diminishing land, we're obviously not going to tell them that you drown with your own country. Those people will go somewhere. So it's a problem. In any angle you look at it, it's a big problem, especially for India. Next slide. But yet, we are the lowest per capita emitters in the top 10 economies of the world. This is where the uniqueness of our challenge lies and where carbon trading especially becomes important in our context. I'll tell you, India's per capita emission is 1.91 metric tons. We are the third largest emitter of the world. That is true. We have a very massive population and we are the third largest emitter of carbon dioxide in the world. But if we compare it to other Western countries, for example, USA's is 15.52, which is the largest emitter of carbon emissions. China's is 7.38. Now they have a net zero goal of 2060. Now they have a national level carbon trading program. So they have begun to manage their emissions. Other countries like Canada, our carbon emissions are not even 1/20th of what Canada's emission is, which is why, and a lot of you might know this already, there is an acceptance in global policy that the developed countries and the developing countries are going to have to treat each other differently when it comes to climate change. You cannot put the onus of shifting to greener technology, which is much more expensive, building climate resilience, which is much more expensive. This lays in extra economic burden on any developing country like India. For example, in Rajasthan, we do have to burn coal to provide electricity in Rajasthan so that people can switch on fans at 45 degrees Celsius of temperature. It's not like we're burning coal to power ACs in European homes at 20 degrees of temperature. No. So there are two things that I want you to keep in mind. One is simply that India did not cause climate change. Whatever strategy we evolve in dealing with it, we need to accept, first of all, that we are not the ones who've caused climate change. We are not the ones who did the Industrial Revolution. We've just started to build an economy. Two, the economic burden of mitigating climate change, we need to be very wise about it. We can gain $11 trillion in the next 50 years if we export decarbonization. If we export carbon credits from India, our revenue from that in the next 50 years can be of as high as $11 trillion. This is also a figure that is quoted by Government of India everywhere. Next slide. So let's come to the concept of carbon trading, and then we'll link it to how we can use it in India, especially in Pondicherry. What is carbon trading? Now, I had the good fortune of meeting the gentleman who came up with the concept. He got at Harvard. He got the Nobel Prize in 2017, the Nobel Peace Prize for developing the UN Clean Development Mechanism. What carbon trading does is, for example, let's take an example of Amazon. Amazon is a company that will, even if they start decarbonizing today, it will take them a long time to decarbonize, say, at least 50% of their emissions. And yet we will have a 50% of emission left because, you are humans. You will end up emitting something. Just by breathing, we are emitting carbon dioxide, and we should not stop that. So what Amazon should do to become carbon neutral is that it should pay somebody else to save as much carbon as they cannot save. Now, if I'm a farmer in India and I would practice agriculture a certain way, I would say, let's say, save 100 metric tons of carbon dioxide. Now, I am eligible to get carbon credits for those 100 metric tons. Amazon, which has a net zero goal, which needs to offset its 100 metric tons of emissions, would come to me, buy from me those credits, pay me whatever rate they want to, and then they are carbon neutral. And I got the money to practice sustainable agriculture. It's a very simple concept. It's outsourcing. It's simply outsourcing your carbon emissions or saving your carbon emissions to somebody else who needs to do it, who does not have the funds to do it. Now, one thing, it is definitely an equal and equitable solution. What Europe is doing, Europe has a very large emission trading system. 90% of the value of carbon credits, and there is $300 billion worth of carbon trading that happens every year. good amount of that comes from Europe only. Europe is a very large emitter of carbon dioxide, but they're also by 2030 they want to be carbon neutral. So everything that they are emitting, they're also paying somebody to save that much. So it's called global warming. If you emit in America and save in India, it's not going to matter whether you save in India or you save in America. The total overall level of CO2 needs to come down. That is the big picture here. So what carbon trading does, it makes this concept very equitable. It is responsible. It creates a roadmap for the reduction of future emissions without compromising on economic growth. It's constructive. It creates an ecosystem for climate mitigation as an alternative and profitable strategy rather than just compliance adherence. Here, I would also like to give you another example. Maybe since there are more government officials here, they can relate to it. And there are people from the Pollution Control Board also. There is a polluter pays principle that is followed across India's jurisprudence when it comes to environmental law. Now, polluters pay principle, for example, let's say we ban wooden stoves or cow dung stoves in India today. How many policemen can we send to every household in Indian villages 3 times a day to check what they're cooking on? We cannot do that. It is simply impractical. But if under an Ujjwala Yojana, we can give a gas cylinder for free, that shift would automatically happen. So there is an incentive involved. That is, if our previous policies were about stick, this is about a carrot. So that is the basic difference in our traditional conservative approaches to mitigating climate change and these market-based solutions that we will be exploring in the course of this presentation. And it is, of course, a very sustainable way. Market-based mitigation measures are built on existing infrastructure, technological and commercial, and carry the capacity to assimilate future innovations and engender its own growth. Carbon trading, it is integrated into the business processes. We continuously at Offset Go deal with a lot of businesses. We're dealing with a lot of companies who want to get to carbon neutral. So what if we start telling them, okay, no, you can't buy this material, you can't buy that material, you can't buy that material, their entire process would fall apart. And we have to accept the reality that those companies are there not to save the environment; they're there to to make money. What we need to do is save environment while also making money. So that is where market-based solutions come in, like carbon trading. Okay, next slide. How it all started, carbon trading was happening since 1980s, even at the end of 1970s, there was a bit of, the concept was around. But a major breakthrough happened in the Kyoto Protocol. This was 1997. The Kyoto Protocol, a lot of you must be familiar with, was a landmark international agreement. It divided the world into Annexure 1 and Annexure 2 countries, meaning that countries that are going to produce carbon credits and countries that are going to buy carbon credits. That is when UNFCCC gave the entire mandate, developed the clean development mechanism. Even today, India has a lot of projects registered in UNCDM. Delhi Metro in July or August last year sold some carbon credits on UNCDM for 19.5, making 19.5 crores of revenue. However, the problem with Kyoto Protocol was that the largest emitter of the world, the United States, wasn't a party to it. So it more or less crashed. There were a couple of other problems. There was a lot of double counting. There was also a very ambiguous legislation around it. Significant countries were not a part of it. So the carbon markets that the Kyoto Protocol created came down and crashed in 2010. I'll tell you why. Say there is a small farmer in India. He will generate, let's say, 5 carbon credits. Now he cannot go to Europe to sell those 5 carbon credits. There were a lot of middlemen that get involved, a lot of traders that get involved in this trading process. So farmer A sells it to trader C. Trader C also buys the carbon credits from A2, A3, A5, A6, A7, whatever. And then he further sells it. And there were a lot of further aggregators who would finally go, one person would go and sell it into Europe. The problem was that this created a lot of double counting. For example, India was writing, okay, A1 also saved 10, B1 also saved 10, C1 also saved 10, India saved 100, whereas India had just saved 10, and that too it had sold to sold to Europe. So this problem of double counting was a big issue, and this is where blockchains kind of solve the problem. Blockchains give you a decentralized ledger where, even as we, the owners of blockchains, cannot go and change the transaction. Whatever is happening would happen very transparently, and there would be no double counting. And I'll again address this point later in the slide. But coming to the history of carbon trading, so carbon trading crashed in around 2010-11. There was a complete flatlining of carbon trading that was happening. There was a lot of uncertainty, a lot of ambiguity, and a lot of mistrust. India till date has a lot of carbon credits that of that era that nobody is willing to buy even today. Then in 2015 came the landmark Paris Agreement, the first agreement in which all countries of the world became signatories. Later, of course, the United States pulled out under Mr. Donald Trump. But at that point of time, the Paris Agreement, instead of forcing countries that you have to decrease your emissions by XYZ amount, they encourage countries to come up with self goals, their own nationally determined contributions. And I'm very proud to admit that India is one of the few countries in the world that actually came through on their nationally determined contributions, and we over-delivered. I think we actually saved as much as we wanted to save, because we invested largely into renewable energy, and we have very vast potential of renewable power. Finally, however, Paris was still incomplete. Although in Article 6 of Paris Agreement, it was said that carbon trading, and I'm paraphrasing the articles, is that carbon trading and blockchains and other technologies of this kind need to be integrated, it need to be used. However, not much.
Khaja Nawaz, Asum Alam, Musa Kesari, Anapurna, Nidhi, Arvind, Archana, Arun Prasad,
Sir,
Bilal,
can you mute yourself, please? Yeah, thank you. Okay. There was still, as we were talking about Paris, there were still some issues in Paris Agreement. The only point of contention, and again, I had the good fortune of talking to John Kerry himself, who is currently the US President's envoy, special envoy for climate change. The main contention in Paris Agreement was that we couldn't draft the rules of carbon trading. This in the Glasgow conference that happened last year, where India too declared a net zero 2070 goal. This is where Glasgow conference became very important, and the clean development mechanism, the CDM that was created in the Kyoto Protocol, has finally been shifted to a sustainable development mechanism called an SDM, where the rules of carbon trading are going to be framed. It is still not out for public scrutiny. It will be I think by the next COP summit, end of this year, we'll have an international legislation on what kind of carbon trading should happen according to the protocols. Next slide. Now, what are the current trends? As I told you, there's $300 billion of carbon trading that's happening even today. The price of carbon, average price of carbon credits is $5 currently. This is going to go to $100 and beyond in the next 30 years. The price rise is expected of 4,500%, much higher actually. If we want to keep in the this is the natural trends. If we actually want to maintain the targets that we had set under Paris, the price would even have to increase much more. Today, 1 in 8 people already live under an emission trading scheme. An emission trading scheme is where a country puts a cap on how much it's going to emit and offset and carbon trade internally, not internationally, but internally also. So China has an ETS, South Korea has an ETS, entire Europe is an ETS. There are several states in USA, although USA doesn't have a national ETS program. Several states in USA have an ETS. Along with this is the compliance-based carbon market. Also, there was a growth of voluntary carbon markets. Now, because the legislation is slow, a lot of companies did not want to wait for it. Google has been carbon neutral since 2016. Microsoft is carbon neutral. Amazon wants to become carbon neutral by 2030. Even Reliance Industries want to be carbon neutral by. No, sir, India doesn't have an ETS. Even Reliance wants to wants to become carbon neutral by 2030. So a voluntary, we saw that carbon markets started being divided into two parts. There was the compliance bit that goes into the international legislations, the Kyoto Protocol, UNCDM, now the COP26, which is going to become SDM. But there was also a voluntary carbon market. There was a record growth even during the pandemic of this voluntary carbon market, and it reached around $1 billion, more than $1 billion in 2020. Now, this is a very big step, because and a very good opportunity for India itself. So, both in the compliance sense of the way and in the voluntary carbon markets, we as a country are best suited to export carbon credits. You can see the way the carbon credit price is going to rise in the next 30 years. How much we can gain by it. Next slide, please. But where do we stand? Where do we stand as a country? We do have a goal of net zero 2070. Why it's 2070, and a lot of people have chastised our country. Although I personally believe that it is a very good idea to keep the goal so late as 2070, because India is not the one that caused climate change. We are actually suffering because of a problem that Western countries have created. So we should take our time. We should not. No climate action should come at the cost of economy. Of course, climate action should happen, but not at the cost of our economy. So after this net zero 2070 goal, Bureau of Energy Efficiency, which works under the Ministry of Environment, came out with a cap and trade policy. Now, somebody in the audience just asked whether India has an ETS or not. No, sir, it doesn't yet. There was a bill in Parliament by Mr. Jayant Sinha about creation of the same, but it was not passed for the simple reason that the government is in the process of creating such a policy. The Bureau of Energy Efficiency has taken out a document for stakeholder review that says just what I am telling you right now, that there is a voluntary carbon market in India. There's going to be a compliance carbon market in India. We already have a perform, achieve and trade PAT scheme for energy saving certificates for power and energy consumption. That is going to be integrated with the voluntary carbon markets, and an uniform ETS would be created for Indian industries in the next 1 or 2 years. That is what the BEE has said. Next slide. But and this is where things get really interesting. Today, India has $10 billion worth of unsold carbon credits. That even this year, in last year in the Glasgow conference, we have asked for countries to buy these carbon credits, but nobody is willing to buy them. Why? Because of the reason I just said, that there's a lot of double counting. You have to understand that if somebody is going to pay you to save carbon dioxide, they want to know that you have saved carbon dioxide. It cannot just be all on paper. So there was a lot of double counting. There was no mechanism for building transparency, trackability, and this is why nobody is going to buy our previous credits. And even the carbon credits that we are selling today, and I'll give you two examples. One is of Indore Municipal Corporation. In 2019 or 20, I'm not sure of the date, they sold carbon credits that they got out of biomethanation plant and renewable energies. They got approx revenue of 55 lakhs. But do you know what was the average per credit that they got? 30 cents. The global average price is $5, and they got 30 cents. That's not even 1/10. Delhi Metro that sold their carbon credits just last year, towards the end of last year, they got 40 cents. They sold 19.5 crores worth of carbon credit, but for each credit, they just got 40 cents. Imagine if those 19.5 crore worth of credits would at least be sold at the global average, which is of $5. The amount of revenue we could have generated is immense. But what is next slide, please? What is the reason why are we losing out on so much? One, We do not have an infrastructure. We're not doing it on blockchains. We have no central mechanism for monitoring, tracking, tracing. Also, a very interesting point is that all of our carbon crediting is West based. Even today, we are following European or American protocols for generating carbon credits. Now, this is very painful, particularly to me, because I see the carbon markets, and in 2015, 90% of all the carbon credits that were issued, they were issued from UNCTM. Today, 75% of all carbon credits that are issued are not issued through UNCDM. They are issued through the voluntary crediting mechanisms, which means private credit carbon crediting companies. 75%. And even the current Indian projects or other African Asian projects that are on UNCDM, they are trying to remove it from CDM and shift it to voluntary crediting mechanisms. Yet in India, we are following the same Western protocols and not developing new protocols that can actually show how it would work in India, how Indian and Asian businesses or Indian or Asian farmers, governments can save carbons and develop indigenous protocols that even take care of other SDG parameters. There's a lot of difference in different kinds of carbon credits. For example, you can save 1 ton of carbon dioxide by planting a tree. You can also save 1 ton of carbon dioxide by putting up a solar panel. However, the price of both of these kinds of carbon credits is very different because they have different kinds of impacts on the environment. You have other incentives to put up a solar panel. For planting a tree, maybe there are not so many economic incentives. And this is also visible in the price trends of various kinds of carbon credits. And since I monitor this, I'll give you an insight here. There is a 16% decline in the price of renewable-based carbon credits and a 40% rise in the price of nature-based carbon credits. So the overall SDG impact or the environmental impact of your carbon crediting activity also plays a key role in what kind of value you can generate out of selling carbon credits. What India does is that we are heavily reliant on renewable. Both Indore and Delhi Metro had sold renewable based carbon credits and they got no value from it. Obviously 19.5 crore or 50 lakhs is also a good amount of revenue for a municipality or a metro corporation. But this can be a much higher number. If we say 50 lakhs could also have become 3 crores very easily if it would have been done through the right way. So these quality parameters, this heavy reliance on renewables, West-based crediting, and lack of technical infrastructure to monitor and track is what is causing this problem of low value that we are getting in India. Next slide, sir. Now I'll actually I'll pause here. Can you go to the previous slide? I'll pause here, and if anybody has any questions to ask, I'll answer that, because after this we'll get into the how Puducherry can generate carbon credits. So far on carbon credits and how the mechanism works and what is the policy and the philosophy behind it. If anybody has any questions, I'm happy to answer. Somebody in the chat has asked, could you please throw some light on the option of open access renewable energy through power purchase agreement? Does it come under carbon neutral or carbon trading? Sir, anything that comes under carbon trading needs a provision of additionality. So, for example, if the government is going to do that, is going to go ahead with the project, irrespective of whether they get carbon credits or not, it becomes very difficult to get carbon credits. You have to prove it. This concept is called additionality, and you have to prove that this project carbon credits are absolutely necessary for carrying out this project. Without the additional revenue that carbon credits would generate, this project would not take place, and so amount of carbon will not be saved. This Chile, government of Chile just got something called Red Plus carbon credits, which is reforestation, deforestation carbon credits. What this means is that they had a forest in Chile that they wanted to cut according to their development plans. they did not cut it, and for the amount of forest that they did not cut, they got carbon credits. Not for planting a tree, but for actually not cutting a forest, they got carbon credits, and good value of carbon credits for just not cutting a forest. So there are a lot of ways that you can generate carbon credits, but you do have to prove that it is additional. Without the revenue that the carbon credits would generate, the following project would not be undertaken. All right. Are there any other questions? Great. Then I'll move forward. Next slide, please. Right. So now let's come to the subject of today. I mean, how can India gain by what can India gain by robust carbon trading, and what can Puducherry especially gain by a robust carbon trading? So, we, as Kalamegam sir pointed out, we did visit Puducherry last month, and we had the good opportunity of meeting with the climate change cell, the honorable chief minister, his good offices, and a lot of other dedicated offices, and also the normal people of Puducherry, the academics of Puducherry. And we understood a lot of scope for generating carbon credits in this area, because one, Puducherry is extremely vulnerable to climate change. I mean, whether it is the increasing salinity in soil, whether it is the rising sea levels, whether it is air pollution, whether it is waste management, there are a lot of things that are critical to at least Puducherry's entire existence, that if climate change happens with the rate that it seems to be happening right now, most of it will be vanished. Most of your city would be underwater. So now and obviously Puducherry has taken a lot of constructive and a lot of great steps, something that is missing in a lot of parts of India about climate change. The awareness that I've been interacting with government officials for some time now, but the awareness and the enthusiasm that I witnessed in Puducherry was something very unique and refreshing and encouraging. So there are a few ways of generating carbon credits that I can tell you very easily from Puducherry. One is biomining of legacy waste management, or like whatever you're throwing in landfills has a lot of methane based carbon footprint. Methane now has 24 times more global warming potential than carbon dioxide. So any carbon credit that comes out of methane is a much more valuable carbon credit. I know that some projects on this line are going to be undertaken, and they are very much eligible to get. More such projects can be undertaken by generating revenue through carbon credits. More such projects can be in the plastic recycling, e-waste recycling. By recycling refurbishing 3 laptops, you can save 1 ton of carbon emissions. There is 100 times more gold in 1 kg of e-waste compared to 1 kg of gold ore, and you can get it out with 80% less carbon emissions. So imagine the kind of wealth you can create by just if you can generate carbon credits through e-waste recycling. Another very interesting point would be restoration of wetlands. Wetlands are the most. We just celebrated World Wetland Week last month, and wetlands are very, very crucial for the survival of human species on this planet, or for us to avoid climate change. Mangroves save 12 times more carbon dioxide into the soil compared to normal forests. Wetlands, obviously, because they're rich with insects and other microorganisms, their carbon sequestration capacity is much more higher. Now, that is one. Point number two, if wetlands start being eroded, the carbon dioxide that it will release in the atmosphere is going to be much higher than cutting forests. So there is a lot of wetlands and a lot of mangroves, and Puducherry is also working towards conservation of mangroves. That especially is a very prime source of carbon credits. These are called blue carbon credits. And I'll give you the example of a small country like Vietnam that has sold the most expensive carbon credit in the world, and that came out of mangrove reforestation. These are called blue carbon credits. The price, $5 is just the global average. Sweden's average price for carbon credits is $140. So we are getting just 30 cents. But what we can get if we actually instead of renewables we diversify our carbon crediting portfolio, we'll actually be able to better mitigate our own carbon footprint and generate a lot of additional revenue. Similarly, with seagrass sequestration, the UN has said that 1/5 of all carbon sequestration needs to come through marine-based solutions, through seagrass, through wetlands, through ocean solidification, and a lot of other things. So these are also eligible and very valuable carbon credits, very rare and very highly priced carbon credits can be generated by Puducherry if these activities are undertaken. Renewable energy, of course, it doesn't mean that you ignore renewable energy. That is also a very mass source of generating revenue. That is something that you already have a lot of incentives to do. So you can also get carbon credits to there. Sustainable agriculture. Now, whether it is your usage of fertilizers, whether it is your usage of water, whether it is your usage of tilling practices, what kind of tilling you do, what kind of crops you grow, they can also there are countries that are just generating carbon credits through agriculture. USA has set up a special cell in White House to generate carbon credits from agriculture. Microsoft last year, and they have a very big carbon footprint. They're a very big company. All of their carbon emissions they have offset through agriculture based carbon credits. So you have to keep up with the trends. You have to see where there is more value, where you can, if there are five units of resources that you can occupy, how can you generate the maximum benefit both in terms of environment and economy, and this is the way to do it. Next slide, please. Now, what do we do at Offset Go? And I've told you a lot about how carbon trading should be done, how should the technology behind it, how India lacks the technology, how we are following West-based protocols. So what is the solution here? Now, what Offset Go has done, we have created a blockchain-based carbon marketplace. Every carbon credit that you get, it is divided into a gold, silver, or a bronze tokens. These are all NFTs, if non-fungible tokens. If anybody here follows cryptocurrencies, you would know already that what kind of values NFTs are generating today. So, for example, on Offset Go, if you from a biomining project, you upload your carbon credit, an AI ML based SDG algorithm rates the overall environmental impact of your carbon credit, what kind of quality of project you have maintained, and then it is put on blockchains and your carbon credit is issued in form of gold, silver, or bronze tokens. So a quality is maintained, a tech-based trading infrastructure has been created. But not just this. Another key point that we do is that we develop indigenous protocols. We are not just copy pasting because what is valid in Ukraine is not valid in India. Our processes, our environment, our climate is extremely different. What kind of our business economic realities are also very different. So the protocols that we need to follow also have to be different. So all of that has been integrated on the interface of Offset Go, and we're working with a very vast, diverse list of clienteles, whether it is corporates where we calculate their carbon footprint, and it's not just simply offsetting all of your emission. If you're emitting 100, we would make sure that you at least organically reduce 40 and offset 60, because you do have to offset. You have to set science-based targets for yourself. So all of these things are also done. Next slide, please. So you can see you on the left, you can calculate your carbon footprint. The organizations, the businesses that we right. So I'll just address all the questions in a bit. So on the left, you can see that all the organizations that we work with, they need to offset their emissions. So we calculate their carbon footprint, tell them how much to offset. In the center, there is the marketplace where the sellers and the buyers interact. On the right, for example, a farmer in Puducherry who has generated carbon credit can upload it and sell it. Next slide. Right. So before I come to what would be a strategy for Puducherry to get to net zero, let me just answer the three questions that have been asked. Is there any alternative for conventional energy readily available for industries for use? Yes, sir. In fact, a lot of industries have now started setting up individual furnaces, whether it is for different kinds of waste material from neighboring industries or whatever. They set up these individual furnaces and they generate electricity by burning waste. It is better than, it is not the ideal solution in my opinion, because it does create some pollution and it does have an ecological footprint, but it is enormously better than just throwing away your waste in landfills and letting the same emissions in the atmosphere nonetheless. So yes, there are other ways, and I know some companies who are getting carbon credits for this also. We are working with them. The another question that was asked was, mention an example how agriculture carbon credit are earned. Say Microsoft and sold out, and the economic transaction behind this. Okay, so I'll give you an example. For example, I'm a farmer. I can there is a fertilizer that I have been using for quite some time, or a certain crop that I was growing for quite some time that has a that takes up a lot of water, that causes, through the tillage pattern that it requires, through the kind of fertilizer it requires, it has so and so amount of carbon footprint. Should I choose to grow crop B instead of crop A, I would lose out on some revenue. Let's say that my revenue would decrease by 10%, but I would still go and shift my agriculture to crop B because I want to save the environment. I don't want such a high footprint of carbon emissions on my conscience. Now, when I've done that and I got it registered, you have to call somebody like Offset Go to come make a protocol for you, get you registered and get you carbon credit. So as and when how many carbon emissions you have saved, you will continue getting the carbon credits for that, and then you can put it up. For example, that is why Offset Go is important. Right now, all of the trading in India is happening informally. Zomato is offsetting all of the emission that they're producing, but they're doing it elsewhere. Delhi Metro is doing it elsewhere. Indore Municipal Corporation is doing elsewhere. On Offset Go marketplace, it would be a common marketplace for everybody. Whoever is generating carbon credits can come and put up their carbon credits there. It's all on blockchain, so there's going to be complete transparency and trackability. And anybody who wants to buy can come and buy from there. So that is exactly the process that needs to be followed for generating and selling carbon credits. Now, as I was explaining for Puducherry, if we want to make, and a funny thing, and I was thinking about it just this morning when I was dressing up, that when we met the Honorable Chief Minister in February, we told him that we're going to make Puducherry the first carbon neutral city of India. It is very well suited to become a carbon neutral country of city. Because it's on the coast and it is critically endangered by climate change, and B, because there's compared to the other parts of country, there's a lot of awareness about these activities, so it would be easier and quicker to get this done. However, in just the 1 month's time, and back then it was only us who was talking about it. In just 1 month's time, last week, even Mumbai has actually went ahead and announced that they're going to be the first carbon neutral city of India. So the UN Secretary General had called this a race to net zero. This is how fast climate action is happening. Climate change is happening much faster, but climate action has also started to pick up pace. When we presented, Puducherry would have been the prized, jeweled first city of India to become carbon neutral. But Mumbai, in just a month's delay, Mumbai has today taken up the claim. So there is a race to net zero, and I hope that other cities don't fall much behind. Now, what would be a strategy to reach to net zero? One would be to mitigate. Now, there is a way to set science-based targets. There is an organic decarbonization that needs to happen. For example, whether it is through plastic, whether it is through power consumption, or transportation. Now, transportation has 17% of all carbon emissions come through transportation. In Puducherry, especially managing municipal solid waste, MSW has a very large carbon footprint. Now these things do need to be reduced, and there is a lot that can be done very easily to reduce this carbon footprint. So from 100, we can bring that down to 60. That is to have a detailed assessment of Puducherry's GHG emissions, whether it's the volume, the pattern, the division, distribution, segmentation, which industries emitting what, how compared to your neighbors, are you above the Indian average, the South India's average, or similar cities average, whether you're below that comparison, and develop and apply a carbon policy based on this data to identify one, sources for carbon credits, sources for carbon emissions, number two, and three, alternatives to bring down the native emission value to a minimum, whatever is the minimum amount. Two, to offset. Now, to mitigate Puducherry's impact on the environment in real time by investing in Indian offsetting projects. For example, we know that Puducherry is especially going to be threatened through sea level rise. So the kind of carbon crediting projects that we'll take would be especially the projects that will reduce the impact of sea level rise. The kind of carbon credit projects that we'll take would be on mangroves, on seagrass, on wetlands. These would also generate a much higher revenue. If Indore is selling it for 40 cents, Puducherry would be able to sell it for $100. And that is a very big statement to put out to the country. That means leading by the example. Next slide, please. The sectors that we can engage we have to engage to make a net zero Puducherry. One, as I said, waste management has a very big carbon footprint. Two, pollution. I was very surprised. This was something that I did not know, that pollution was such a big problem. But when I visited, I checked the levels, and I come from Delhi, so you can imagine that pollution doesn't really surprise me. But it was very surprising that in a coastal city that has a good amount of airflow, pollution has become such a problem. Agriculture, water today is such a big problem. Today is World Water Day, and I want to wish all of you a very, very, very happy World Water Day. There was a very good poem that we read called Rhyme of the Ancient Mariner. I'm sure some of you also must have read. There's a very beautiful line in it called "Water, water everywhere, not a drop to drink." And that is the situation where we are today. Punjab in 20 years is going to be completely dry because they have grown so much rice and used so much water that their water table is absolutely at an abysmal state right now. In Puducherry, there's going to be a lot of increased salinity in the soil. There's going to be a sea level rise, and at the same time, the groundwater is going to become saline and inaccessible. So that line in the poem that we read in our childhood in NCRT saying "water, water everywhere, but not a drop to drink" is the future that we are looking at. Industrial carbon emissions, household carbon emissions, whether it is through segregating waste, whether it is through power consumption, whether it is through architecture, that can be done. Forestry, biodiversity, indigenous species, of course, Karikal and other Mahe and other places of Puducherry also have a very ethnic and indigenous population of birds and flora and fauna and a lot of other things that need to be preserved. So any activity that is taken in this regard would not only save A, but from A to Z, it would be helping the environment throughout. And this is the beauty of nature-based solutions. Any nature-based solution would be valued higher at a much higher price compared to other non-nature-based solutions for just this reason that once you plant a tree, you're not just saving XYZ amount of carbon. Right, sir. I'll again answer all the questions. So when you plant a tree, you're not just saving XYZ amount of carbon. You're also, having a lot of microbes being sown into the soil at the roots of the tree. You also have a lot of birds that are going to nest there, that are going to increase pollination around it. Bees that can have hives on the tree. So an ecosystem is created when you plant a tree, when you put nature-based solutions at the forefront of your policy making. That is why a carbon credit that comes out of any agriculture or nature-based is valued at a much higher price. Okay, so somebody has asked that is an industry eligible to get carbon credit if it's waste external AFRF facility to convert the waste to alternative fuel or cement kiln? Yes, sir. Of course, again, there is the question of additionality. But I know some companies that are already getting carbon credits by transferring their waste by converting their waste for fuel and cement kiln. that has anything that is saving carbon is eligible to get carbon credits. The only thing that you do need to prove is that without carbon credits, that project would not be undertaken. Another question that was asked, that could you please explain how wetlands can reduce GHG emissions? This is a very, very, very good question. So, you see normal soil and you see wetlands. Wetlands, by the name, you'll understand that it is a wetland. There's a lot of water that is that the soil holds there. Now, because of that characteristic of that land, a lot of microbes and other organisms are present in the soil that are not present in normal soil. Now, these microbes and organisms sequester a lot of carbon dioxide. They are the kingmakers of carbon sequestration. So, 12 times more carbon is stored in wetlands compared to normal forests. Let me reach to the end of the presentation and I'll give you some other stats also. But by depleting wetlands, what you do is that, one, all of these organisms that were in the soil that have sequestered so much carbon, 12 times more than normal soil, that gets released, and obviously wetlands carbon sequestration potential. So it's a double-edged sword that our necks would then hang up by. Okay, next slide, sir. Okay, so we're coming towards the end of this presentation, because now I want to focus some more into making this into an interactive session and get some questions and particular customized solutions for Puducherry. But covering the human impact of all of this, the life expectancy increases. There is creating employment in green industries, mitigation of sources outside Puducherry. There are, for example, problems that maybe some neighboring territories of Puducherry are also causing. So when you are already generating such a revenue from carbon credits, you can direct this revenue and actually safeguard Puducherry. For example, pollution is not just coming from Puducherry. Pollution is also coming from neighboring places. So you can have this wealth, the $11 trillion worth of revenue that India can generate in the next 50 years through exporting carbon credits. This can be done to customize, build Puducherry's resilience towards climate change. And it's not just through carbon credits that you're going to get this revenue. When Mumbai has announced this plan of getting to carbon neutral, they're going to get funds by C40 Cities, which is a global organization building net zero cities across the world. There is a project from World Bank that has a very good fund for building net zero cities across the world. So there are as Dr. Alfred pointed out at the beginning of this webinar today, that this is also an opportunity. Today, India's reliance on carbon, we are just emitting 1.9 metric tons of carbon dioxide per capita. We're not emitting 15 tons of carbon dioxide per capita. So our reliance on carbon dioxide is already very low. What we need to do is not reduce it, but maintain it to this level. And this is a great opportunity for us to do that by generating additional revenues and actually not making this at the cost of our economies. We have the luxury that the West does not have, but we are losing out on that. When we presented, we were going to be the first city to be carbon neutral. Today, we're not. It's a race to net zero. So that there is also a lot of fast-paced action that needs to be driven to create such a comprehensive ecosystem and saving carbon emissions. This would also, obviously, other things that are very important for our ecosystem, whether it is conserving birds, insects, flora, fauna, biodiversity, all of that would also be automatically taken care of once you're rejuvenating your mangrove forests. Your chances, the losses that you take when a cyclone or a flood hits you, that gets reduced. These are intangible amounts, but they are also there. That is also money that you've saved. So don't just think about climate action of the 100 crores that you can generate from carbon trading. It's going to be 1,000 crores, because other 900 crore also is being saved by avoiding climate disasters, beautification, etc., or what problem you would face because of migration or pollution. That doesn't even need to be explained. And another key point, that when we go and we deliver nature-based solutions, when we deliver market-based solutions, we are not just helping the most privileged or the most or the more privileged sections of the society. We by calculating the SDG impact, by calculating a comprehensive quality of carbon credits and the total overall environmental impact, we help the forest communities, the tribal communities, the people who work in waste management. Do you know that the average life of a e-waste recycler, the informal e-waste recycler in India, is 32 years? The average life expectancy of Indians is more than 65, and they know that they're going to live for just 32 years, and they still go ahead and do it. So it is these stratas of our population that not a lot of people have the time to think about. And at least I'm very fortunate today that I'm addressing people who can do something about this. That it is these people that you'll end up helping. Obviously, even if climate change happens, I am sure that it will not wipe off entire human race. The richest 10% of humans might find a way to live. Maybe by 2070 we would have more technology, and we can build houses in air or whatever. I don't know, but that cannot be done for all citizens of this planet or all citizens of our country. So it is the responsibility to take climate action. It's a part of a social welfare state, because who's affected by climate change? It is the laborers, it is the farmers, it is the common informal sector worker that is most affected by climate change, by lowering of agricultural productivity. I can go and buy a Bisleri bottle even if my tap runs off. Not a lot of other people have the same privilege. So that is the kind of value that will be generated by taking up such market-based solutions for climate action. Next slide, yes. So yes, this is the end of the presentation from my side, and I see that we have just 15 minutes left also. So we should lead by example, of course. And our tagline at Offset Go is that we're saving tomorrow today, because you can't save tomorrow. You do have to save it today. So that's what we are trying to do. And I'm very, very happy that Puducherry and Kala, I'm very thankful to Kalamegam sir to invite me to take this workshop also. It's a great opportunity to talk to all of you. And I know that a lot of you are in a position that can actually drive a lot of constructive climate action. I come from a very, I come from a younger generation, and maybe a lot of people here may or may not see the ill effects of. I mean, everybody is seeing the effects of climate change today, but the worst is yet to come, and you may not be able to see it. But I am very sure that your children are. So any action that you're taking today, it's not just for you, it's for your children as well. We are really very critically endangered by climate change. A 20 crore refugee crisis from Bangladesh. We already have a refugee crisis, and we have to put in such controversial refugee measures today to mitigate this problem. What would happen then when we have so many people coming in? What would happen when water runs out? What in Delhi? We used to fly kites in 15th August because June was when monsoon used to come. This year monsoon came in September. Whole June, July, it was dry. Monsoon came in September in Delhi, and I was amazed that people still don't think climate change is happening. We have messed up the environment. India has an opportunity to both build a carbon neutral economy and to save itself from the ill effects of climate change without compromising on its financial growth. I'll just if there are any other questions, you can put them on the chat box or ask me directly. This is the end of the presentation. There are a few questions that have been posted here.
Hi, Sankalp.
Yes, sir.
Before going to the questions, it was a wonderful presentation, Sankalp. Before going into the questions, it is my privilege to welcome Dr. Sushila Negi, Madam, Scientist, Department of Science Technology, Government of India, who is present with us today in this webinar. Madam, we are very much honored by your presence here today, ma'am. Okay. Now we'll continue into the question answer session, and if we can run through the questions in the chat box, as well as if any participants would like to pose some direct questions, you can unmute yourself and ask the questions. You can take the platform, Sankalp.
Yeah. So somebody's asked that what is the first step an industry to follow to get carbon credit process against waste to alternate fuel, to whom we need to approach to get guidance on this? Yes, sir. So I will drop, I'll just put in my mail ID in the chat box itself. You can definitely reach out to me. Currently, obviously, in India, we have a very low awareness. So there's not a lot of people who are working on this. That is why, a good part of my job is to go and make people aware of the problem and the benefits of carbon trading. So you can definitely reach out to me, and I'll in person. I'll walk you through whatever the kind of project is. It depends on the project, what kind of requirements it would have for generating carbon credits. Another question was asked that I heard that in Middle East countries, the CO2 is pumped back to the deep boreholes. Is it part of carbon neutral? Yeah, I've heard of this as well. There is, I don't know about the boreholes, how stable that is. I'm sorry, I'm not aware of that. But this is called direct air capture. It is also this technology is also present in other plants. Switzerland is, I think, leading in direct air capture of carbon dioxide. Currently, it is very expensive. The technology to directly capture and sequester carbon dioxide is not feasible or scalable right now. There is also another problem, and this was also highlighted is highlighted in various conferences that I attend. That even if you start storing carbon, where are you going to store carbon? So direct air capture, or obviously there are other ways to sequester trees. The biomass that is present in trees is also majorly made of carbon that is present in air. So the best way, according to me, as I've argued throughout the presentation, is not to use these artificial technologies. We already have a way to capture carbon dioxide. We don't need to spend $200-300 to capture 1 metric ton of carbon dioxide, when we can do that by planting a tree. The tree would capture all the carbon dioxide we need to capture. We can plant mangroves; they will capture 12 times more carbon than normal trees. So we can increase our wetlands. So these nature-based solutions is where the world is moving at, is where value is present, where you can get more value and where you can get more revenues as well. Right. So is there any other question? And please, I've spoken for a very long time. I'm sure this is a very new concept with blockchains and nature-based solutions and carbon credits. I'm sure you'll have a lot of questions. So please feel free to ask me. Thank you, sir.
If there is any other questions, we'll take it up now.
Hello, sir. We have a question from Kempa Balkaris.
Yes, sir.
So first of all, congratulations for your work towards Make India to reduce carbon emission. And my question is, what's your advice to common people to reduce carbon emission?
My advice to common people is to start doing things that you can do on your own. For example, you have to become aware of your own carbon footprint. This was something that I've also just started doing last year, but I've started keeping a check on what I am emitting. If I can use public transport, I should use public transport. If I can, I segregate my waste, even though the person who comes to pick waste from my house puts both the plastics in the same bag, but I segregate my waste. I recycle all of my e-waste. So there are a lot of things that individuals can do. Right now, of course, more than individuals, we have to create policies that drive individuals to do that in India, because it always comes down to the cost point of view. We are already a very frugal economy. Most of our e-waste is actually recycled. It's just that it's recycled in the informal sector because we do not have a formal infrastructure for recycling e-waste. that is where change needs to be driven. If I look at my family, and half of it lives in Bihar, their carbon footprint it's nothing compared to it's absolutely nothing. There's no carbon footprint. I think they save more carbon dioxide than they emit. So the idea is that obviously at an individual level we should start practicing sustainable practices, because in the future, 5-10 years down the line, it's anyway going to become very expensive, and we will not be able to afford having these such habits. But more or less, our focus today in India specifically should be to create policies that mitigate the cost bit of mitigating climate change.
Thank you so much for your information, sir.
As rightly said by Mr. Sankalp Suman, the changes has to start from us. We need to first identify our carbon footprint and see how we can offset that. And that is the whole idea of today's webinar. We had invited the various industrial people and also the management people of various institutions in Pondicherry and government departments as well to this webinar, so that we, in order to sensitize them about the importance of knowing their carbon footprint and how it could be offset. There are many ways, including the carbon market-based mechanisms like carbon trading. So hope this workshop is a wake-up call for all of you to start thinking about your carbon footprint and how you need to offset them. Because as Sankalp pointed out in his end note, it is a younger generation which is going to face the calamities which are caused by climate change. We had lived in a world during our young age where we enjoyed nature to its fullest extent, but it's not like that for our children. They'll be posed to extreme weather events like heat waves, water stress, floods, sea level rise, what all. Lot of threats are there for the younger generation in because of the rising temperatures and global warming, which is definitely having impact on the existing climate. So it's right time for all of us to think about how we are going to offset the GHG gases emissions, which is causing this climate change. So think about it, and for any help on identifying your carbon footprints and methodologies for offsetting it, on how to mitigate the carbon emissions, you could always contact the Puducherry Climate Change Cell. We are there to guide you. And also Mr. Sankalp Suman, the co-founder of Offset, is always willing to guide us in the market-based mechanisms for carbon credits. Let us also take his help. Thank you, Mr. Sankalp Suman, for joining us and giving a very informative presentation, and it was very impressive also. And also I would like to thank the Department of Science Technology, Government of India, who is supporting the Puducherry Climate Change Cell through the National Mission for Sustainable Knowledge on Climate Change. They have been extending the financial support as well as guiding us from time to time in our various activities. And also, I would like to thank our Secretary and Director of Department of Science and Technology for ably guiding us in organizing such webinars. And I thank the Senior Scientific Officer who was here to deliver the keynote address. And also, I thank Dr. Sushila Negi, Scientist E, DST Government of India, who had participated today in the workshop and the webinar as a guest. And I participate and I thank all the participants from various parts of the country who are present today, from various sectors like industries, institutions, and government departments. Thank you all for joining us and making this event a grand success. Thank you all. So, we are signing off this workshop. Thank you.